talent and technology, because we are a fast-growing company, as we show. We are, as you would say, a classical business process outsourcing company. But more of that, we are experts in communication. We are experts in communication between the consumer and the brands. And we enhance our clients' brands by making that communication in different ways. When we think of people, and when we think of talent, when we think of technology, we think scale. And we scale fast. And the opportunity for us in this region, in Western Africa and Nigeria, is to scale fast. That has been a journey so far done, and that is a journey we're going to do in the next couple of years here as well. Because talent, technology, means scale. We provide a lot of classical service, what we call the front office, the technical support, the back office. But you might also see that over the years since we started, that kind of communication has been digitized. When we started 44 years back, that was one single channel. That was a classical phone line. Nowadays, we have a digital experience. And digital experience is also connected to what I see as an opportunity for us in this region. Because this is a large region. We talk about 1.4 billion people, where approximately 65% of that 1.4 is under 30 years. And that is a new consumer. Our clients are looking to that growing consumer base, the young consumer base that want to interact in a digital way to the brands, not by phone, not by going to the office. So if I'm going to continue to scale this company that we will, I need to make sure that I'm surrounded by an ecosystem that is connected to the technology existing today and a talent pool that can apply it every single time, because my future client needs to be engaged in that digital way. When I take it one step further, we are already now looking into how we communicate with our clients in the artificial intelligence, in the metaverse. And that, for all of us in this region, puts emphasis on something else. Now the contact is not physical, it's not even digital in many ways, WhatsApp, everything we know, it becomes a third dimension, and that will happen as well. So, we started 44 years back. We are today 420,000 people. We are about 15,000 people in this region. And ambition in Sub-Saharan Africa is super strong for the reason I mentioned before. Consumer base, talent, and availability around the technology. That's why we're moving on. We have managed today, thanks to that, to locate approximately 310,000 people to work from home. That is a talent enabled by technology to not take the bus into VI every single morning, to save themselves 4 hours, add quality of life. That is the difference when we start applying technology and people, what it can bring to society. We cannot do it all over the place. It depends, we're selective. But I want us to think always from the opportunity perspective. When we see Lagos today, it is a struggling traffic, chaos, access to buildings. But applying the right technology, the right talent, we can actually surpass that one. So, I will not go into the details, but Mr. Alake mentioned one comment during your presentation. He reached out to all of us and he said, does it make sense? And yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I've had the pleasure for the last years to work with Mr. Alake. I worked with a couple of the initiatives for Lagos State. I've seen the different policies. I've seen talent here. And yes, it does make a lot of sense. If I look at the fundamental reasons why we see the growth moving forward from a corporate perspective, is yes, technology is booming. I don't look at what is the 65,000 people that do STEM. I look at the 600,000 that graduates in Nigeria every single year, and I look at another probably 100,000, because then I can scale 5 times faster. That's a fundamental reason why we're here. The second piece is the digitalization. I'm getting a bit old right now, but if I look at the young generation and the tech savviness, the speed of adopting new technologies, that's relevant for me. It's super relevant. There's not a better region in the world to do this than Sub-Saharan Africa. Not one single better than that. When I look at the opportunity to, for once, address what we call diversity, inclusiveness, this is also a great opportunity. You mentioned certain initiatives where females come to tech and STEM, and that's all good. In this area, we can do far better, and we're doing that today. We can bring in to our staff approximately 60% females. We can also train them, we can enable them, and they can move on later on, if so desired, into what I call the digitized economy. I want us all to note that, yes, we are a large corporation, but the majority of the economical backbone in Nigeria, Western Africa, is still the small and medium enterprise. The small and medium enterprise needs to be enabled as well, because then you can broaden the base. Because talking about technology, access to technology talent, without getting the small and medium enterprise into the scheme, that does not become a very inclusive discussion. It becomes a smaller base the whole time. So I want us to think of technology talent, also making sure it access the larger population. But here, we have approximately 55% females. The tech infrastructure, which is for us crucial when we invest, has essentially been done. I had the pleasure to work with a lot of fiber and cellular operators for the last 13 years in Africa. We have taken a giant step in this region, a giant step. Today, the capability to work from home at other locations. Technology that has enabled us to work from home sometimes. It has enabled me, with a lower latency and bandwidth, to be able to provide these services from different locations. The infrastructure starts to come in place. So when I put everything together, when I sum up the numbers, from a corporate perspective, our bet is very, very clear. And the bet is always around the opportunity, not about the challenges. Let's have a common definition of this. And I think I'm going to leave it like that, and we can open up the discussion for the rest of the panelists and have that as a bit of an input of why we invest in this region, why we believe firmly in Nigeria, and why we think both talent and technology will bring us there. Thank you very much for listening to me, okay?
Is this on? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lars, for setting the tone for the panel. It's an honor to have you with us, along with all our distinguished panelists today. My name is Olamidun Majakodumi Ogundoyin. I'm the founder of Suya Bistro and the country director for Nexford University. Nexford is a next-generation licensed accredited university that's empowering economic mobility around the world, and we're doing that by preparing talent now for the future of work. I stand on all existing protocols. I actually read a joke recently that said, the way everyone stands on all existing protocols at official events, that leg. I would love to get right into it. So today on our panel, our theme really is focused around preparing talent for the future of work as it relates to economic and societal development. And we have some fantastic panelists who have already been introduced as they came on stage. But I'd love to go around one by one for us to just introduce yourself again, please, and what your organization's mission is as it relates to what we're here to discuss on this panel. So in just about a minute each, and then we'll then go into in-depth questions, and then we'll leave some time towards the end of the session for Q&A from the audience. So I'd love to start with Mr. Suma.
Thank you so much, Ola. William Suma is my name. I'm one of the senior advisors and program managers at UNDP in Nigeria. And the talent management issue for UNDP is a development issue. We strongly believe that a country that is able to harness its human capital stands on very solid ground in terms of translating its aspirations into a tangible transformation for its society. And so from a UNDP perspective, as a development agency of the UN system, our objective is to really address the very root causes that undermine the ability of countries to be able to harness the potential of its people, particularly young people who are not just the future, but they are the now. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. And next we have Dr. Usman, who's representing the DG of NITDA.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to be representing my CEO. My name is, as first was introduced, is Dr. Usman Abdullahi. I am the Director, IT Infrastructure Solutions at the National Information Technology Development Agency. NITDA. NITDA is a federal government agency that is responsible for coordinating information technology development issues, regulatory issues, as well as provision of advisory across the country. So it's not, its role is not just at the federal level or state level, but our minister was here at AOT 3.0. My DG was here as well, but for me, it's the first time, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And he who needs no other introduction, would you please, just tell us a little bit about what your organization is doing now to prepare talent for, the future of technology?
Well, number one is that we are planning for growth. That comes with a lot of facility logistics. Second thing, we're recruiting. And recruiting is one step of the way that people come in, but more importantly, I'm looking for partnerships. Partnerships we can work with local players in Nigeria to build up the confidence, because there's one set of companies that I need now, but there's one set of companies that we need for tomorrow, and more importantly, one set of companies that my staff needs for tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, I don't expect anyone to stay at the same company for the next 5 years. And I think the best company contribution that I can provide is to make sure that, number one, I equip them for the current work. Secondly, I equip them for the next work when they leave. Because the best staff you can have are the ones that leave with something earned and something that can be an investment for the next job. So that's what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. And now off to Dr. Bayo Adekombi, who is our founder and lead consultant at Data Science Nigeria. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about talent. I lead Data Science Nigeria, a non-profit that has been leading the charge in building competence and capacity in data science and artificial intelligence. Actually, one of the most recognized in Africa in terms of learning, research, solution delivery, and consulting. Interestingly, I started as a product of my understanding working in the private sector for about 22 years, where I had the privilege of leading the largest consumer database in Africa for two largest telecoms operators, working in 22 countries as a C-level executive. And I went for my PhD, and I saw the huge gap between PhD concept and the real problem in the industry. And that was why I started Data Science Nigeria, to build capacity in developing homegrown solutions by democratizing knowledge so that every child everywhere can learn the skills they need to build the future they deserve through Data Science Nigerian project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And up to our Madam Commissioner, Madam Ade Fisayo. Can you please tell us a little bit about how you're preparing the education, what you're doing to prepare our talents, our students today to be ready for the future of tech in the workforce?
Thank you very much. My name is Folashade Ade Fisayo, the Commissioner for Education, like she said. And one thing that we've been trying to do in the past 3.5 years is to move the education sector, which has been less innovative than other sectors. And I'll say this, it's not Nigeria peculiarly, it's something global, that the education sector hasn't felt very comfortable with technology. So what we focused on is getting ourselves to understand that we must future-proof our children. We must get our children ready for the realities of the workplace. The young people who came in today who won those prizes will probably not enter the workforce until about 2030. So whatever we are teaching them today has got to be relevant for 2030. And a lot of focus in Lagos State has gone into this. You heard Mr. Deputy Governor tell us about what we're doing with EcoExcel, so that right from primary school, even early years, the teachers are teaching using technology, and we are teaching the children to use technology as well. At secondary school level, what we're doing with our comprehensive schools, where we are deliberately teaching children the skills of coding, artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on, deliberately, because we know that this is the reality of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'll set a little bit of a background before we move to our more in-depth questions. So this is for William Suma. In August 2022, the Daily Mail reported that the number of student visas issued to Nigerians going to Britain rose from about 65,000 to a 686% increase. And there's a significant drop in Nigerian tech talent due to mass resignations, the brain drain, and the talent exodus of citizens in search for professional opportunities and favorable living conditions. While these moves are encouraged and are important to personal development and growth, we must discuss strategies that can help identify, develop, and retain Africa-based tech talent towards achieving economic growth and decent work for all. An approach that will help develop the country's economy, and then also position an effective system to help talent development and retention across Africa. So with that background, can you please tell us how, in your opinion, Africa can develop and retain its talents?
Thank you so much. It's on, right? Thank you so much for that question, and I think I'll perhaps approach it in two ways, right? And you've touched on one already. Is it possible to fully curb and retain the movement of talent? I'll be the first one to say no. And because people move for very different reasons, right? There are people who are moving because there's an opportunity that allows them to further their own development. I think for me, my question usually in this regard is, how do we ensure that once that immediate or short-term need has been met, how do we reinvest back? But that's a different discussion altogether. I do think, and Madam Commissioner, you've spoken on one, we really need to reimagine what the skills and the training we're providing to our children now. Because the jobs of not even 2030, the jobs of 2025 are requiring very different skill sets. And I'll challenge all of us, for example, if you can go to your university where you studied, those of my age and above, if you can recognize in the curriculum anything in that curriculum, then we've got a problem. Because that means that we're basically recycling the same learning material and assuming that we're preparing this generation for the future. Unfortunately, young people are so connected, they are online, they can interact with their peers, the digital citizens. They understand what their peers are studying in the West, across the border, and they're yearning for that. So one for me would be, the best way to retain our talent is to be able to rethink the skills we are transferring. If I'm getting into a business development or a business administration school, and my goal is to build a business, and I spend 4 years learning the theory of business, chances are very high I'm looking at a kid who's in a business school in Europe, who their first assessment is to work towards an MVP for a business. That by the time you're graduating at 4th year, you've already put out a prototype that is ready to go to market. And those are the things that we need to think about. And this generation is looking for that. So that is one. I think secondly, I'm a big proponent of training. And I admire the work that is being done on skilling. My main concern is how are we retaining that skill from an application perspective? So the risk and the danger we have is that we are training and training. This generation wants to apply the skills that they're learning, but then when they get out of that training funnel, they're not finding an ecosystem that absorbs that skill. And yet, talent is basically the new goal. Let's face it, there's a scramble and a battle for talent. And right now, it's not even just on the continent, it's global. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I will not mention their name because they're all in the ecosystem and we all know them. He had a staff member, high-performing staff member on his team. His staff member resigned and left the country. He's now having to hire his staff member who's out of the country, paying him a higher salary to serve him remote. And what is interesting about this dimension is that this individual says he has the infrastructure to be able to work remotely. So that means he's got power and electricity. He's got internet. He can be able to sit anywhere and serve as many clients as he can. So for me, there's three things. What skills are we transferring in universities and in schools? Secondly, can we create an absorption capacity that can be able to take this talent when they step out of the learning ecosystem? The things we call jobs. We need to create spaces where, after I have been trained, I can then be able to apply the skills. And then thirdly, we need to think about an infrastructure, and that's why I commend the Lagos State government thinking about a tech city. That if I have an idea, I know that I can come to an ecosystem where I'm not struggling about energy, I'm not struggling about access to internet, there's a community, there's a support infrastructure that can allow me to build a solution. So for me, those are the three things I would say. I flip them, those are challenges, and I turn them around. That's one way of retaining talent, recognizing that there's a lot more, of course, that needs to be done.
Absolutely. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much for that. And I think you said a lot of very key things that we need to really place into the African context. One, there's a huge deficit already. And two, we need to be updating our curriculums to prepare for the future. And the future is always changing. The skills that we need today is going to be very different from the skills that we need 5 years from now and 10 years from now. So I would love to turn to Madam Commissioner, Mrs. Adefisayo, to ask how or what methods can we use now? What tools can we use in our education system here in Nigeria to be able to leapfrog us to even meet the standards of today?
Thank you again. I think, just like he said, the gentleman before me said, we really have to address our curriculum. At present, the curriculum is very heavy on content, lots of topics and subjects, and less, there's less done, less inclusion of skills. But what we have been able to do in Lagos State, especially with the comprehensive schools, where we are not hindered by general curriculum, is that we've built into the skills some certain important skills that, into everything that we are teaching, certain skills that every student must have. So we must address our curriculum. And that's why we would include in our curriculum if you want to learn plumbing, if you want to learn fashion design, there are some things you still have to learn. Financial literacy, entrepreneurship, digital mastery of digital language, of communication, and so on. Branding, personal branding, things like public speaking, all the, what we like to call the 21st century skills of communication, of collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, innovation. We have to infuse all these into our curriculum, and that's one step that we've taken. They are not subjects. These 21st century skills, they are not really subjects. You can't say, it's time for problem solving. You integrate it across the curriculum. So I think for me, the first thing that we have to do at all levels is to see how we can integrate these skills. This, of course, means that even our teacher training, because the big problem that we have really is how disengaged teachers are from the 21st century skills. So we've had to do a lot also with training and retraining teachers so they understand the concept of integration of these skills across all subjects. I think for one, we have to address our curriculum and address teacher training so that we deliberately build all these. I mean, I could give many examples, but I think for me, number one is the curriculum.
Thank you for that, Ma. So those are our two top priorities, is curriculum and teacher training. And with that, let's move to private sector. So Mr. Lars, as an employer of choice, Teleperformance has set the highest standards in employee experience with commendable efforts in creating a work environment that encourages employees to learn and develop new skills that will prepare them for the bright future. With the recent palpable growth in technology, there's also a need to further adapt to the future of learning and consistently leverage technology to deliver exceptional learning and experiences across Africa. Many companies in Africa are having a swift transition into the digital technology space and building skills for the future to help tackle socioeconomic challenges in the coming years. So my question for you is, what, in your opinion, are the factors hindering the adoption of tech talent development and ways that you think we can address them?
Thanks for that question. The top hindering reasons is a complex thing. We talked before about how to broaden the base. We talked about curriculums. We talked about having more females into STEM, etc. That's all good. From my perspective, I think we should think on what we're doing is about how we get trained. How is the access to that learning? The access to learning is what I try to facilitate, and that means it cannot always be university. It cannot always be, extra hours on the weekend when people should rest. How do I facilitate the space and time so people can train online? Have that time, 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day to access the training, create their own curriculum at their own pace with different learning methodologies. So I think one of the problems today is that we're still a bit, thinking of the classical model that need to go through the chain, the whole universities and get the curriculum. I think we need to rethink that, and coming from a private side, it's a far more agile methodology, because one thing clear is that when we hire tech talent, we check the curriculum, we check the universities, that's true. But we normally check whether they have that kind of certifications in specific technologies, and more important so, are they updated, okay? The university degree becomes more of a tick in a box, but if you have an old, coding standard 15 years back, you're not relevant. And that brings us to the second thing, is that as a private sector, I need to facilitate for my employees the opportunity not only to skill, but to upskill and reskill. If I, as an organization, stop doing that, and for financial short-term reasons say that we cannot afford it, long-term, I will have a problem with my enterprise. My biggest investment is to find the time to make sure that the staff can re-skill the whole time. That's the only way to become relevant as an enterprise, as an employee.
Thank you very much for that. I want to ask a very candid question that's a follow-up to that. And it's, are you confident in the graduates that you hire at Teleperformance, the most recent graduates? So if you have someone coming in as entry-level staff, just fresh out of university, what efforts are you doing to get them up to speed to be able to perform in your organization? Are you able to fully, are you confident in what they've learned in the university, or do you feel like you're
Very short answer, I'm fully confident. Because what I've seen so far is that they come with a super resilience, with an eagerness to learn, and those are two super important attributes. You can have the best cum laude in any degree, but if you lack resilience and passion to learn, you're out. So yes, I'm fully convinced after 3.5 years working with Tech Talent in Nigeria that they actually have it.
Awesome, thank you for that response. So we know soft skills are just as important as hard skills. Okay, so we're going to move on to Dr. Usman Adnita. The National Information Technology Development Agency is carrying out the mandate for ICT capacity building organizations training and for women in ICT, covering key skills areas in entrepreneurship, in business, in ICT, and communication. This program has been noticed to key into the federal government's Economic Recovery and Growth Plan and support digital literacy and reduce the gender gap in digital technology. The information and communication sector is growing and creating thousands of new jobs every year and providing opportunities for development for women in Nigeria. So my question is, how can we be more inclusive in making sure every person is equipped with the required skills necessary for them to contribute their bit towards economic growth?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's very important. I think the background that you have given is key. The National Information Technology Development Agency, on behalf of government, does carry out a number of capacity building initiatives. Now, the idea is not for the agency to execute, to train Nigerians, but of course to serve as a model for the private sector, for the public sector organizations that are responsible for capacity building, as well as, concerned individuals to ensure that at least they take that and then they work with it. And so, in order to enhance really full participation, there could be about 5 key things. Of course, they are not the only things, but 5 key things. One is identifying the role of government. Government needs to be strategic. That's why I'm glad, I'm glad to be here. This AOT Lagos is one of the strategic initiatives that actually, governments need to do. So government needs to be able to provide the enabling environment. This enabling environment could be through policies, could be through, all the support that government provides. There's so many things that government should do. So at the national level, because there are good case studies that can be taken from what is happening here. At the national level, what NIDA is doing is to create policies that would help towards enhancing what is currently available. For instance, as part of the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy, there is the Digital Literacy and Skills Pillar. Now, that pillar expects that by 2030, we should be 95% digitally literate. We should have that 95% digital literacy across the country, not in one place. So how do we achieve that? So we at the National Information Technology Development Agency came up with the National Digital Literacy and Skills Framework that provides the basic, because you have to have means of measurement. If you can't measure, then you won't know. If you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. So the National Digital Literacy Framework is one of the things that government is doing to ensure that every player within the sector, has a framework, has a standard. If you're assessing skills, what do you assess? There are international standards. There are European standards. We know all those, so what we have done is to come up with a standard that we say this is ours, taking our peculiarities into consideration. So that is just one of the initiatives. Secondly, one key thing is, yes, it's about talent and ensuring that, everybody keys in and is inclusive. It cuts across every strata of the society. The key thing is to know where we are. I'm glad, the SA to the governor in his presentation on the journey so far, the achievements that has been made, there are a number of research activities that have been carried out to identify where we are. So what we are doing in partnership with CC Hub is to really assess the talent. So we are doing a technology skills gap assessment that would help towards identifying really, where we are, what sort of skills are there in terms of the various stratas. How then do we address those? So the idea is to have a national technology talent strategy that every sector of government, every state government, local government can key into to identify. Because the key thing is that Nigeria, has the advantage. We have a very youthful population. About, only 2.7% of Nigerian population is above 60. Only 2.7. So we have a very youthful population compared to others. So this issue of, we have to be strategic. So the idea is to have a national talent strategy that will ensure every sector handles. So that's one. The second is really looking at what my colleagues have already said. We focus on the curriculum because you have to focus on employability skills. There is need for you. It's not just about training, but when you train these citizens, will they get employed? So that is key. So the third is ensuring that you do strategic partnership because government, just as I said, is to provide an enabling environment. We need to be strategic in the way we develop that talent that cuts across every strata. So strategic partnership is key in that. So, for us, there's a series of strategies I'm sure you might have been following that we have partnership with, of course, the state government too has partnership with both nationally and internationally with the Microsoft to train 5 million Nigerians and so on and so forth. So these are just the three. Lastly, let me just mention the investment. Funding is key, very, very critical. And the last is to provide incentives. Because of time. So those are the things that would help towards ensuring that whatever initiative we have is inclusive and it makes the best outcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for all the information and those insights. We love to continue following the journey of the programs that you're putting together at NITA. And I'm over to Mr. Tokunbo Wahab, who is a special advisor to Lagos State Governor. Excuse me. Sorry. Excuse me. So we're going to ask the final question. And I'm going to set a little bit of context as well. So technology has made it possible for all schools to offer their students a wide variety of interesting options. Technology can help students learn and understand the material, and it can also be used as a tool for communication and research, as well as help improve the talents of students in different cores. So my question, as it relates to Lagos State government, is what areas can the state government, through education, improve tech talent development, specifically in Lagos?
I assume the question is meant for me?
Yes, as the Lagos State representative.
Okay. We've said, panelists have said a lot of the things that we need to do. Clearly, we need to address our curriculum, clearly. And clearly, we need to include, not just integrating the core skills like I mentioned, the deliberate curriculum for developing technology. For instance, we've all looked on technology as Word, PowerPoint, and so on, but really deep curriculum on content for technology. Like I'm particular about us learning robotics, artificial intelligence, and so on. So generally our curriculum, number one. And number two, who teaches? Education is based on certain things. What are you teaching? Who is teaching? Where are they teaching? So at the end of the day, there are many options for our students. Again, we have to address devices, access to devices, because a lot of the children, especially in some of our public schools, are unable to get devices. So again, we have to address devices, and this means we must collaborate with the private sector. A lot of the things that we've done in education has been in collaboration, people providing their curriculum, people providing devices, working with us on teaching and training our teachers and so on. It has got to be a marriage of town and gown. It's got to be a marriage of public and private sectors. So these are some of the things that Lagos State just has to do, and what we are doing now at the moment. Like I said, summarizing, addressing what we are teaching, that is the curriculum content, the subjects that we are teaching, providing options for our children so that we are not limiting them to the careers of those days where someone like my dad will say you have to do medicine, but knowing that there is a myriad of options for these children. And many of the careers that they will do, as they say, haven't even been invented. So we have to build into our curriculum a flexibility of mind, an ability to be able to work in various media, milieus, and so on. So what we teach, who teaches, we have to address our teacher training curriculum and deliberately ensure that our teachers are able to deliver. And of course, we have to ensure that our students have an environment within which they can learn. If you provide software and all, and they don't have devices, there is just no point. So again, we have to ensure that our students have access to the devices that they need, and like I said, in collaboration with all stakeholders and partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I'm going to round up with Dr. Bayo Adekambi. Can you please share some final words for us on this panel as it relates to building tech talent and the future of workplace? And then in addition to that, can you also please round up with one word that you can use to describe your organization's approach that you're going to take in the next 2 to 3 years, in the next short term, to be able to gear us up for building a smarter Lagos or Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think, like everyone has said, we're in an emergency as far as talent acceleration is concerned. To build smarter Lagos, we need smarter talents. And talents are raw materials. The same way you look for oil, you refine them, you package them, you enhance them, and you deploy them, that is the same intentionality we must bring to talent development. It cannot just be speaking, it must be a lot of doing. And there's a lot of use cases to look at. I always look at India as a use case. Today, in the world of AI and data, 16% of the talent are in India. From data annotation to advanced automation system, the country is leading. Why? Number one, policy. And I'm so glad that the commissioner has spoken about that. We need right policy to drive intervention. In India today, from grade 6, every child is learning data science and coding. It's intentional. It is known. You must practice it. Number two, practice. It's not just for this student to learn this, they cannot operationalize it. Now, they now have what they call Ideathon and Jobathon. What does that mean? While you are learning in school, you can take on holiday jobs, and companies are incentivized to support. While I was Chief Innovation, Digital and Analytics Officer at MTN, I started those kind of things where bringing students, at they are learning and platforms. We have to create platforms for young people to solve the world problem. Of course, we're going to have jackpot guys with jackpot, but when the pipeline is big, there will always have those that will stay with us. So let's build enough so that even when people jackpot, there will still be people that will stay with us and build solutions that solve the world problem. And that is the mandate for all of us. We've got to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And your one word to describe your approach?
Be intentional, but focus. Go do it. It is time.
Fantastic.
That was more than one word, but can I ask the rest of my panelists the same question? Just one word to describe your approach in the short term. Let's just do it. I guess we're doing 3 words now. Yes.
Well, ours is just building on what he said too, is...
One word, sir.
No. Getting it done.
Getting it done. Thank you. Leverage. I like that. Lagos State.
I have one word. I have many. Let me just say, be deliberate, be intentional, be focused, and build partnerships, collaborate.
Partnerships and collaborate. I love that. Thank you, Ma. All right, and with that, we'd like to take some questions from our audience.
We'll only have time for just one question, unfortunately. so that we can get to hear from our keynote session with the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Bank. Just one question. So that I'm not blamed, I'll hand over to the moderator to choose where the question will come from. Anyone? Any questions? And if there's none, it's perfectly okay. You have a question over there. Let us know who you're addressing your question to. And it's one question, please. Not like 5 in 1. Or they say one word and you use 3. Your name, what your question is, so we can round up this session. Thank you.
My name is Fortune Ben. I'm a member of the Elite Smart Town community. It's an aggregation of smart young teenagers, and I have about 2 questions.
I literally just said one question. Quickly, very quickly.
Okay, so my question is, so studies have shown that about 80% of electricity is generated, or about 80% of electricity in Lagos dwells or thrives on generators. So if we're trying to plug the gap and engage in talent retention as, a program, we understand that there are talents that are leaving and then there are skills there's a skills gap. And so if we want to plug that gap, how do we invest majorly in electricity to make sure that that gap doesn't exist? Because it's one thing to, have all of these programs in place, and another thing to have something running those programs.
Thank you very much, Fortune. Is that question to anyone in particular? Is it to anyone in particular? Okay, open floor. Over to you, moderator.
I think we need Mr. President in the room. But how about we direct it to our panelists in a way that says, how do we just do it when we don't have lights?
I think Dr. Bayo might take this one.
I do understand that there are problems, and if I ask our friend from Bangladesh, he will tell you. I've done some work in India. There are problems everywhere, and I do agree with what you've said. Of course, we're seeing a lot of interventions happening around identifying where the problems are. We're seeing solar being deployed, there are a lot of off-grid emerging. Things are happening. But the truth is, we cannot wait for everything to happen. Things must happen in parallel. Even in the worst of the world, things are happening as far as tech is concerned. Go to the most remotest village in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. Go to Bangalore in India. Even without power, people are working. And that's why there are laptops today that can work 4 hours charged. That's why we all charge ourselves. So let us understand what works within our limited context and just make it work within our reality. And that is the story. Let's make it work.
Thank you very much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause to our first plenary discussion. Tech talent workforce towards economic and societal growth. Quick picture, photo up with the press. Gentlemen of the press, just a quick photo up. Just some housekeeping. SK, how you doing? All right, good. So we have just some housekeeping so you know what else is happening at AOT. So at the breakout session room 3, we have stands. That's the AWS stands, Amazon Web Services. They have information for startups, especially those of you interested in up to $100,000 of the AWS Active Credit Initiative. Yes, please can we have Mr. Deputy Governor to join them as well? And the SA as well, thank you. Also, we have the Google booth where we have YouTube Shorts and Google Lens where you can get up-to-date information, and that you might want to check out on that. And last but not least is LASRA. If you have registered via LASRA, it's going to take you only about 3 minutes, okay, to complete your capturing. If you haven't, you can go online and just type LASRA online. LASRA online. You can start the process there and finish it at the booth, and that will take you less than 3 minutes. But if you want to do everything from the start, it will take you about 5 to 7 minutes. So it's very important you come and update and validate your data. LASRA will be 10 years next year, so if you were one of those that started very early, maybe you got married, change of name, change of address, it's a good idea to take advantage of that opportunity right now. Once again, they are at the breakout session 3, which is to my left or to your right of the hall. There's still lunch as well ahead, but most importantly, we have our keynote speaker coming in as well.
Abubakar Sulaiman. Abubakar Sulaiman is an economist and a banker with over 20 years' experience in consulting and financial services. As the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Bank PLC, his top priority is to optimize the impact of financial intermediation in critical sectors that can catalyze growth and create a future of shared prosperity for all Nigerians. These sectors are health, education, agriculture, renewable energy, and transportation, and are the heart of Sterling. Mr. Abubakar Sulaiman has also served as an executive director and chief finance officer of the bank, and was the executive sponsor of the bank's non-interest banking business, Sterling Alternative Finance. He currently serves on the Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN, and the advisory boards of Lagos Business School, LBS, Enterprise Development Center, EDC, of Pan Atlantic University, and the Bantu Blockchain Foundation. He is a firm believer in the role of efficient markets, emerging technologies, and small businesses in unlocking productivity, improving national competitiveness, and driving inclusive economic growth. Abubakar holds a bachelor's degree, BSc in Economics from the University of Abuja, and a Master's of Science MSc in Major Program Management from Side Business School, University of Oxford.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podium, Mr. Abubakar Sulaiman.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce to you the Chief Executive Officer, Sterling Bank, Mr. Abubakar Sulaiman. And a round of applause for him, please, as he takes us through building resilient talent for digital transformation.
Okay, Mr. Deputy Governor, I didn't recognize you when you flew up the stairs. I had to look again to ask myself if it was you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for spending the afternoon with us. I will skip the protocol. I have only 20 minutes. I do have a presentation that I've shared with the team, but I was certain that that's not the best way to share the story that I would like to share. The question that we're asking is, how do we build resilience for the digitization journey ahead of us? I said ahead of us because, to a large extent, the digitization of Africa has not started yet. I think sometimes when we look at the level of digitization that we've seen in financial services, we start to think that the journey has gone far. But in truth, at the core of our economy, there's still a lot of work to be done. And for that to happen, I'm quite glad that the panel that has just rounded up was focused on education and skills acquisition. Because the reason Africa missed out of the first industrial revolution was that we did not have access to energy. It was very important that you have access to energy, otherwise you couldn't participate. It was what drove the revolution. Energy and, to a large extent, education. What we are now facing is, as we move from the first industrial revolution and we started to think about what was going to come next, we then faced another problem. We also do not have access to infrastructure, because you cannot digitize without infrastructure. Let's understand that the objective of digitization is to amplify, is to take what you have, make it far more efficient, make you more productive. So let's not forget that the African digitization journey is just beginning. And the fact that we have a few bright spots, we should not forget the core infrastructure required. But today, what I'm supposed to speak to is, how do you create resilience in the talent pool for digitization? But I think when we're talking about digitization, we make one fundamental mistake. We think it is what happens when you bring technical talent and you put them in a room and then they digitize. But the truth is that every digitization journey must start with the end user. It doesn't matter how brilliant your digital idea is, if the end user is not open to the idea, if they are not willing to access, if they don't have the capacity to access the final product, you have already failed. You can do an excellent job of building platform and ecosystems. The end user will simply not move. And so my thought process is, how do you get the end user on board before you go into the business of all of the other talents that are required? And that has got to be through storytelling. In other words, long before you put a device in front of someone to start to transact or to carry out their day-to-day activities or to work digitally, you have to tell a story that make them see part of what you have seen, why you think that their life can be transformed through digitization. And very often, that story is not being told. So I think that this talent of storytelling as we prepare to digitize whatever we do is very important. But beyond storytelling, which is really how you create the market, how you enable the market, we must also remember that every major digital journey has to be governed. It has to be funded by someone. It has to be funded either by the state or by private sector. And once it is funded, it means it has to be governed. How do you tell a room of directors, average age of 60, that you want to tokenize something, that you want to build a product that relies on crypto, for instance? How do you have that conversation? So again, we quickly jump into digitizing itself and building the platform. If the people who are going to govern the process do not understand, have not bought in, then it's irrelevant to start to talk about the talent of building, because you're going to build and then you run into obstacles along the way. So for instance, we've seen the cases where people have built digital products without thinking about the governance environment, without thinking about the regulatory environment, without thinking about carrying government along. And what then happens is that you have an excellent product that would simply die once it meets reality on ground. So I think that those people who govern our ecosystem must also be considered as part of the digitization ecosystem and as part of the talent that we must continue to work with. And of course, as we move away from the big picture and we start asking ourselves, what happens on the street in companies that are trying to digitize? Again, you face a problem with senior executives like myself who may have built our career doing something very traditional. Part of it is we've been very good salespeople. Maybe we've worked very well with the government and we've brought in those relationships. We have corporate banking experience. And you are then saying to us that we should spend our time and resources committing to a different way of doing things. And in many cases, we have very short time left in our career, because by the time you get to executive level, you've probably spent 80% of your career. Your commitment at that time is a safe landing. You're not looking for a new takeoff. And remember, within existing corporates, all of your digitization idea would report through some executives who have spent his or her life building a different things and preparing for retirement. How do you make sure that those people form part of your digitization journey? The way we have done it is to ensure that we co-create with them. I'd remember when Sterling Bank was trying to digitize retail lending, we had found out that we were doing 5 billion naira worth of retail lending in an entire year, and we couldn't handle more than 5,000 people, and we had over 23 people in the system. So we concluded that this could never scale, and we decided to disband it. But to make sure we could build something else, we needed the board. So what we did was, at the board retreat, instead of coming to just present budget and macros, we would bring the young people who were building the digital lending platform to come to the board and demonstrate what they were building. And so suddenly the board members themselves brought out their computers and became part of the test ecosystem for their product. That product today does minimum 100 billion naira worth of lending with the full support of the board. that is how you carry along the people who you need for your journey towards digitization. And then you move away. You move away from there and you say, okay, I have carried the board along, I've carried the executives along. What about the most important, one of the most important layer, which is senior management, the people who wake up every day and interact with every process of the digitization? How do you carry them along? How do you make sure that they are not threatened by what is coming? How do you bring in, for instance, talents that are not part of your traditional cultural system and do not necessarily respond to the traditional management approach, and put them in your own existing system without creating chaos? So it matters. And what we've done in that instance is to get them co-create and to co-own. Co-create meaning that while the idea is still fresh, get them to become the sponsors of the idea. And to co-own, meaning that whatever outcome is going to come out of digitization, make sure it ties into their own reward system. Now, let me go to what most of you hopefully want to talk about, which is the actual talent itself, the technical talent in the digital space. There are at least 3 different stories that we should be mindful of. The first story is that the digital talent or the technical talent in the digital space is one of the most globalized talents ever in human history. And the reason for that is, prior to now, you could use your border controls as a way to control how talent is priced in your system. And so, for instance, there's some element of wage control in every system using the border control, using the visa system. And so you couldn't physically go and become a doctor in the United Kingdom unless somebody let you in. And so you could control that. Similar to global outsourcing, the talent in the tech space has been freed. It has been released of that burden of physical movement. And this is fundamental because you need to see the wage differential across the world to understand how a young man living in Ibadan earning $400 a month is about 20% of the cost of a similar person doing the same job, even in Poland. And suddenly companies have no choice but to begin to access talent globally. What that means is that if you are in Nigeria today, you are not competing necessarily against the next company in Nigeria anymore. Suddenly you are competing against companies from all over the world. And your thinking has to change. And one of the panelists said something, that you cannot dictate where talent goes. And it's absolutely correct. You cannot. What you can do, however, is to figure out what talent respond to. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what talent respond to. The first one is that if you are looking for tech talent in the digital space, they don't respond to suit and tie. I've not yet met any one of them who happily wears a suit and tie. And so if your culture is that people must wear suit and tie to the office, you've already lost the first match. Secondly, they don't respond to what you call a career path. This idea that I'm going to chart a 5 or 10 year career path for you and then you become a manager, completely alien to them. And so again, if you try to fit your tech talent into existing organizational structure, they will react very badly to it. Thirdly, they don't react to titles or respond to titles. So if you come in and you give them an organizational structure that has all of those layers, they cannot function. So it means that if you have a traditional organization, either you delayer your organization and change your culture and become a much more responsive organization, or you have to create alternative organizations for them where they can function. In our case, we've been more focused on creating alternative organization. Then gradually, we're learning from them and changing the traditional organization. And so you need to think about that. And then finally, they respond to money, but not in the way that we think. They respond to reward system that can be tied to the work that they do. At the ultimate end of that is they want to be part of whatever they are creating, right? So that's why you see the founders ecosystem is very aggressive. If you find a model that allows them to build for you, but also become part of what they've founded and they have a chance for an upside, you have a far higher chance of retaining them. But the solution to our problem is not to retain the talent that we have, because irrespective of what you do, the mobility is a given and they will move. The solution is to create far more talent than we need. The solution for us today in Africa is to create far more talent than we need. I'm not one of those that is concerned about JAPA. Not at all. My concern around JAPA is that a lot of people are ill-prepared for the life they are going for, and they're running into trouble, and it should matter to us because they are our citizens. My solution is to see JAPA as the greatest opportunity Africa has ever had to export its most valuable talent. The greatest opportunity, the first time that you cannot be stopped with visa, you cannot be stopped with they have all kinds of standards, organizations that will rate your product and you cannot export them. They have all kinds of trade restrictions. But when it comes to talent, it is impossible for anybody to stop us. And if we are graduating over 400,000 and we're only able to employ 200,000 today, the conversion rate for graduates has become 50%. We need to focus on making sure that those other 200,000 every year are able to access opportunity globally without leaving our continent. And so what we have done, and it's probably best to share from experience, is that we are creating tech hub across the country. Because first and foremost, the talent is highly distributed. And you don't want to pull all of them into one place because then you create a different problem with infrastructure. The second thing we're doing is supporting organizations like Nexford, for instance. We are one of their partners, like Decagon, Old School. We're supporting organizations that can take this talent from graduation and anywhere between 6 to 18 months turn them into people who become globally, are able to access the global opportunities and immediately become employable. I think the biggest chance for us is to look at this large unemployment pool who already have some basic education and ramp them up and grow them and make them part of the tech ecosystem or the tech workforce. And so I round up by saying we have an opportunity of a lifetime. I also believe that it is one opportunity where the government may help, but the government cannot be the one to fill this gap. And the reason is when we say education is an investment, and we know it is, then we should expect a payback from education. One of the problems is when you make education free, you almost eliminate the need for people to work towards being able to pay back what is invested in them. This part of the education value chain, government should help clear the path with policies, but the private sector should fund it. And we have been very successful in funding this. My first attempt at funding this was when we worked with Decagon and we funded 40 people. At that time, it sounded very expensive. We paid 80 million naira to train 40 people. All 40 of them were employed within 30 days of graduating, all 40 of them. And on the average, their income went up by 400%. So if somebody's income is going to go up by 400%, then that is a viable person to fund. It doesn't rely on government to give them the money to get that education anymore. And finally, we cannot build enough infrastructure to train the millions of people that need to be trained. But we have
plenary session. We'll take some announcement, but before then, I'd like to quickly call on all our panelists to please come towards the technical stand so that you can be mic'd. Dr. Ezekiel Falola, Mr. Adewale Adeipo, Robert Taiwo, Idris Mugaji, the Honorable Commissioner for Education, and of course, Oroluwa Bubwe. Can we please come towards the technical stand?
Yes, and also Robert Taiwo, MD at Philips Consulting Limited. Please do make your way. Also, we still have yet ahead, of course, the lunch break and the breakout sessions. A very interesting one. We heard Dr. Bayo talk about the JAPA syndrome. So retaining talent, reversing JAPA is one of the breakout sessions we're going to have after lunch. There's also accelerating technology talent in the digital economy, challenges and opportunities. That one is also an interesting one. And reimaging tech workforce policy in the age of disruption. The beauty of the breakout session is that it will be happening simultaneously, and the silent disco version, which is your headphones, will give you the opportunity to switch between sessions. So we're looking terribly forward to that as well.
What if you have access to all Lagos State amenities? What would you do? If you need access to loans, educational services, and discounts on all amenities and infrastructure, and even better security, your Lagos State resident ID card can get you all these benefits. You too can enjoy huge benefits and access to better healthcare with your Lagos State resident ID card. Remember, health is wealth, and your Lagos State resident ID card can get you access to it. A smooth, easy, and comfortable ride is very important in your journey to success, and your Lagos State resident ID card can help you get it. Can see, I'm enjoying the ride. Registering with LASRA today will help the government know how to properly cater to the needs of all Lagos State residents. So don't delay. Go to the nearest LASRA registration center today, get registered, and collect your Lagos State resident ID card. Be part of the plan for a greater Lagos. This message is brought to you by the Lagos State government and the Lagos State Residents Registration Agency.
Wema Bank.
Go all out with our last. That's all my friends and family. Them bust my head, them send money. One more them go all out for me, oh. All out with our last. Plenty bills you got to pay. Sort amount today. Get the loan without delay. All out with our last. So save money. All out. Invest money. All out. Begin jolly. All out with our last. When I walk today, all out. I been a kill you there. All out. Go all the way. All out with our last. Save money. All out. Invest money. All out. Begin jolly. All out with our last. When I walk today, all out. I been a kill you there. All out. Go all the way. All out with our last.
Alert. Your bank, your way. Powered by Wema Bank.
My name is Hakeem Popola Pham. I'm the Honorable Commissioner of Science and Technology, Lagos State.
I'm Simon Melchior, CEO of ASECO Nigeria. We're using drones, UAVs, or RPAS, or a remotely piloted aircraft system, to fly over Lagos State and to map the whole of Lagos State. Lagos State is over 3,500 square kilometers.
This particular project, which is the Land Automation Administration, is very important to Lagos State government because it really fits into the team's agenda and part of the third pillar in the team's agenda under the education and technology. And also, we've been working towards becoming a smart city.
First of all, what I really have to commend is the vision of the Lagos State to have done it. It's the first time a state in Nigeria is using drones to do its orthophoto map and to capture its landmass. It hasn't done before in Nigeria. When the drones were procured, we had to get permits to import this equipment. This is very, very advanced equipment, so it's considered dual use. So we needed to get some permissions to be able to import this very advanced equipment, number one, and we also needed to get permits from the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and other agencies to be able to actually operate, to fly these drones in a safe manner. So this took us about 2 years, of procuring and getting all these licenses in place. So we've started flying, and we now have captured over 95% of the landmass of Lagos State. And in doing so, really, we've also been able to showcase wherever we fly these particular competences. All our pilots are Nigerians, and it's so inspiring and amazing to see the children in the schools that we use for takeoff and landing points, their eyes and how inspired they are with new technology. That's been a great and an amazing project, so to speak.
One of the most important...
For these plenary session, 5. You can go there. Somebody's not going to be there. Teresa is not coming. Teresa is not coming. The lead discussant for this plenary session is the Vice Chancellor, Covenant University, and he will be represented by the Business Management Department's representative of Covenant University. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I invite upstage Dr. Ezekiah Falola. Can we put our hands together for Dr. Falola, please? Oh yeah, now next one. Come on. There's no video for anyone. The next panelists will be the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, CWG PLC. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome Mr. Adewale Adeyipo.
I am Boboye Orolo.
Boboye.
Yes, the
Okay,
moderator.
all right, okay. The next person to join these panelists will be the Managing Director of Philips Consulting Limited. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Taiwo. Okay, I'll call both of you now. Representing the Executive Secretary, National Board for Technical Education, Kaduna, is no other person other than Dr. Koko Hatim. Can we put our hands together for him, please? And the moderator, the Chief Executive Officer, Gerberman, please welcome Oroluwa Boboye. And finally, the beauty in the midst of men, the Honorable Commissioner of Education in Lagos State. Please welcome Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this plenary session. I'm very honored to be moderating this great panel today. Our topic of discussion is Workforce Talent Strategy, Building the Public Workforce of the Future. My name is Oroluwa Boboye. So I'll give a quick narrative and then we'll go into the questions. It's a challenging time for the public workforce as part of the great resignation that we are going through right now. A record number of people are leaving their jobs. And the public sector is not an exception, unfortunately. The rise of Gen Z and the surge of baby boomer retirement are two more generational drivers that are continuing to destabilize the tech sector. Organizations should consider the issue that hybrid work environment presents in terms of culture, technology, and geography. Organizations are using automation to improve operational efficiency and upskill employees for higher value work. To help state and local governments navigate these challenges in 2022, and lay the foundations for a modern public workforce, governing and government technology are launching a new initiative focused on developing a new talent strategy. However, there is a need for us There's a great need for us to actually explore new rules and best practices for attracting, hiring, onboarding, skilling, and motivating the workforce of the future, and the technologies that help support these goals. So some of the things that we'll talk about this afternoon would include the impact of global demographic and workforce trends on talent development and public workforce. We will also discuss how businesses should structure their talent workforce, planning based on today's evolving era. We will also take a look at external forces and internal factors, fundamentally to redefine the three dimensions of future of work, which is the work itself, the workforce, and the workplace. And finally, we will discuss the global workforce strategies that foster human capital development. At the end of this conversation, we hope to have achieved the following. One, we hope to understand the core element of public workforce talent strategy. We hope to understand the tools for workforce planning. We hope to understand the future roadmap of public workforce. And every one of us know the various ways of building a technology-driven workforce. So it's going to be a very robust conversation this afternoon. And I will start with my first question, and this will be directed to Dr. Ezekiah Falola, who represents the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University. So the future of work asks us to consider the biggest question of our age, right? What influence will the continuing march of technology, automation, artificial intelligence have on where we work and how we work? Therefore, we need to work, or even the need for us to work at all, right? What is our place in an automated world? A lot of questions to be answered. So I would put this question to you. What do you think about the future of work? That's one. There are two questions. And the second one is, will digital technology inevitably mark the end of large companies?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to stand on the already established protocol. The Vice Chancellor is unavoidably absent because of other engagements, and he sent his greetings. Yes, now we are talking about the future of work. I want to start by saying that as of 2022, we have over 3.32 billion workforce around the globe. And out of these 3.32, it is discovered that the Asia and the Pacific region, they have about 59.2% of that, which is above the half of the world population of labor force. And when we look at that, it is also very important for us to also look at some of the generations that we have in the world of work today. And I want to start by saying that everybody should know that probably in the next few years, probably by 2030, the oldest millennials will turn 50 years old in the next 8 years. Then not only that, it is also discovered that over 36,000 people turn 55 years every day. So if I may ask every one of us, they seated here this afternoon, how old are you? And where are you going to be in the next probably 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Probably most of us that we are seated here probably will have retired or about to retire from the workforce. Then the question now is, even in addition to that, we only have Generation Z making up 26% of the global population. But that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is this. It is discovered that 693 million plus baby boomers will be retired in the next 10 years. And in addition to that, 40% of millennials making up the workforce between 2022 and 2030. Where am I going? If we have over 693 million plus that will be retiring in the next few years, in addition to probably 40% of the entire workforce around the globe, making up 40%, that will also be probably, that is made up of millennials, then that suggests to us that in the next 10 years, we'll be having over 1.5 billion people that will be retiring from the workforce. So that brings a gap to the level of workforce that we have in the world. And of course, that is the reason why we have more talent hunts, that every organization, they are looking for talent everywhere. Probably that is one of the reasons why we have the JAPA syndrome, that even the developed country too, they are also looking for talent to make up with what they have. Then if you look at that very critically, you discover that we are already having aging population or aging process, particularly in the next 10 years. And if nothing is done, either in public institutions or private organizations, of course, there will not be talent again that probably will be enough for what we intend to achieve by probably in the next 10 years. Then the lead speaker said something when he was making his presentation, and he said that this is the best time for us to begin to look at how we can actually develop our talent and how we have more than enough talent that we are going to deploy to do whatever that we want to do, to make impact, particularly in this digital world. Then I also want to note that even if you look at all of this, it is discovered that we need to begin to train this talent right from probably primary schools. Because if we are saying that in the next few years, we'll be having more people that will be going to retirement, then we need replacement. And even if you look at the public sector very well, you will discover that we have more persons, probably more baby boomers, and possibly Generation Y, who are actually working currently in most of government institutions, parastatals, and even establishments. And even if you look at all of that, you discover that government is not recruiting regularly. And that is to say that before we know it, we might have a serious gap when it comes to labor force, particularly people who are digitally inclined to work and to meet up with the challenge of digital business environment. Then I also want to note that part of what we need to do in this dispensation is actually to depart from the already existing philosophies. We need to depart from knowledge to empowerment, where we empower our people to take up jobs in the digital world. And barrier should not be distance should not be a barrier. We need to develop them. We need to depart from knowledge to empowerment. We also need to depart from forms to skills, because they need to get relevant skills to make them do what we want them to do, particularly in this digital world. Not only that, we need to depart from mathematics to life matters, where we need to have apply applicable knowledge that will help in the dispensation of the digital world. These are some of the things that we need to do. We also need to develop or depart from legalism to realism, because digital world is a reality, and we cannot shy away from all of that. So there's need for every organization, either public or public, to begin to look at how we can train probably our students and those who are already working to meet up with the future of work, because it's very, very important to do all of that. So on that note, I want to say that every organization must begin to work out modalities that will help them to impact the already workforce and people who are actually coming on board to do all of that. Now, when the lead speaker was talking, he said that we have more graduates, we produce more graduates virtually every year. But the challenge is this: how many of them are employable? It's not that we don't have people at the labor market that these organizations can employ, but most of the times, the skills, the talent that they're looking for, they are not readily available in the labor market. And that is why every organization should strive to begin to train our existing staff, and at the same time, try as much as possible to impart even the coming generation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. As an operator in the in the matching space. I'm actually very excited by a statement you made that there's going to be a gap in the demand side. So exciting time ahead for matching, because of course when there's demand, there's a need for supply, and then there's a need for matching. And you said something that I picked up as a play on word, which is you are encouraging us to move from a age of mathematics to lifematics. Quite interesting take there. Thank you so much. A round of applause for him again, please. I am going to move to Mr. Adewale Adeyipo. With up to 85% of costs tied up in people, organizations need to predict their strategic and operational requirements and allocate resources accordingly. But the world is changing, and we all know that the digital workforce is here. So here are my questions to you, sir. What approach can possibly be used to incentivize skilled people? That's number one. The second question, what strategies can we deploy towards the public sector for talent retention?
Can you hear me? Okay, first, thank you so much for that question, my good friend. And a good afternoon to you all. Permit me also to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Wale Adeyipo, and I bring greetings from CWG PLC. To your questions, I've been in 3-4 events, probably not even similar events in the last 5 weeks. And the most used word has now suddenly become jackpot. So I'm wondering, is there a process where we could get this thing into the English dictionary for the world to understand what jackpot means? And of course, it could be a general term that could be used in almost every other economy. That said, attracting the right talent, you must first understand what it takes to be skilled workers, like your question said. And I said, not all employees can be considered to be skilled worker. When you can do the differentiation, it's easy for you to understand how do you keep these folks within your organization. I want to believe the assumption is these are folks with exceptional talent, or these are folks that are well plugged into the plan of the organization. I say something often about the driver of every industry and the driver of every organization. Every organization today have certain parameters and variables that govern their growth process. Meaning, what are those variables today that you could say, if you take away those 4 or 5 pillars, then you don't have an organization. You could do that also to an industry. If you understand the drivers of your business, then it's easy. I mean, the immediate drivers and also your growth plan, it's easy for you to understand what are those elements that contribute to the drivers of your organization. When you understand this, the next question for me will be, who are the contributors to this? Just like the 80-20 rule, do you clearly understand the major contributor to this driver, the immediate drivers, the pillars of your organization, and of course the growth plan that you have? When you do, then it's difficult for employers, like we see today, to consider motivating this workforce as an incentive, as we popularly use. Motivating this workforce, it's not a favor. And I think that's the mindset that we need to have, especially within the private sector, because they are very instrumental to your now and also to your tomorrow. Having established that, then you get into the real skills of your organization and the business that you're doing. And I've said this also in previous conferences and platforms that I've been, that it's important for organizations to pay real attention to this. I've also argued at different times when they say your employees are the asset of your organization. I say, yes, I agree that all employees are assets, but I always put a note to say the skilled and the talented employees are the valuable asset of your organization. And you agree with me that it's not all assets you go to the bank to keep. There are some assets you necessarily have to keep in your house and you think is fine. Once you know this asset, it's important for you to keep them committed and you keep them motivated within the organization. There are no general rules of how that could work. So there's no template to say this is precisely what you could do. But there are methodologies that have worked. We have bonuses, we have extended holiday, extended vacation, we have flexible work hours, we have different things, we have having a more robust health plan. What I could say is every industry must look within their own ecosystem. Check also the competing landscape that you have, because that's also a very critical area that you need to check. A lot of people, a lot of employers in this room will agree with me that it's currently not the employer's market. I've had several interviews on different things in my organization in the last 4 weeks, and when I get what these individuals are requesting for, sometimes I almost fall off my seat. And I'm forced to check HR that, are you sure I'm properly rewarded in this organization? And these are folks with 5, 10 years experience. It's clearly not the employer's market. Organizations must focus on keeping the ones they have and keeping them to stay well motivated within the workspace. And lastly, for me also to check, and I think Mr. Bayo spoke extensively into this, you must clearly understand the DNA of the folks that you're speaking to. There's a particular role we're looking for in my organization, and for 8 weeks we couldn't get it. When we later shortlisted to the last 3, maybe out of 30, the last most qualified 2 candidates did not go to school. They probably left in what we call the GSS3. They didn't do the senior secondary school. And we ran the interview again and again, and they came out to be the best. In our organization, we have a policy that you must be a graduate before we can employ you. That decision died that day. Because we must be able to compete. And of course, when we spoke to them and they gave the terms and conditions of how they could stay, it also didn't fit into the culture of the current CWG. So today we have a fintech subsidiary of CWG called Fifth Lab, not because I can't produce my innovative product within CWG, but the culture of these folks did not completely fit into the culture of CWG. So you must also clearly understand the environment. Money sometimes is not a big motivating factor for this individual. We employed one and we asked him when was he going to resume, and he mailed back and said, resume where? And we said, we gave you an offer letter days ago, meaning you have a job. When will you resume? Give us. And he said he can resume immediately. I work in Abeokuta. I'm not living in Abeokuta. Of course, we had to withdraw the contract and had to state there that you have flexible working hours. But of course, we have other people that are working at work. So we put something there that some of these things can change over time, just to be sure you are not building an unhealthy environment. My point in all this is the skills are there, the talent are there. It's not the employer's market. Your environment, is it conducive for these folks? Are you creating the right processes, digital-enabled environment for them to be able to stay with you? If you have all this, I think motivating them and keeping them committed to the organization, it's the secondary job. It's not the main job. It's you being enabled enough for them to find you attractive and be able to stay within your organization and do the needful. And I'll leave that comment to when next I have the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that submission. One thing that did point is the ability to be able to adapt. Just moving out of being very rigid. Thank you so much for the submission. My next question is to Mr. Robert Taiwo, the Managing Director of Philips Consulting. So in today's workplace, successfully competing can only be guaranteed by an intersection between people and technology. Therefore, quality digital tools are not enough. It's important for us to consider mental adoption and readiness of employees for new technology, which is a key factor for success. Therefore, how can a digital transformative plan for talent be implemented? Seems like a very large one. And the follow-up question is, what must be done to optimize the performance of digital talent in Africa?
Great, thank you very much. I thank you so much for giving me the easy questions. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Taiwo. I represent Philips Consulting. Philips Consulting are the largest indigenous consulting company, obviously, in Nigeria. This year, we celebrated our 30th year in existence, which is a great achievement for a Nigerian company. Thank you. Personally, for me, I love this event. In a way, it feels like a bit of a homecoming. And the reason why I say that is in 2010, I was one of the individuals that worked on the architecture for the first innovation ecosystem for Lagos State. And it's really interesting 12 years on seeing what we've been able to achieve and kind of where we are. And I'm actually a Lagosian as well. I think everybody needs to be really take particular attention to the conversation that's going to happen over the next couple of days. Because the thing is, in one way or the other, the outcome is going to impact everybody in this room. It's going to impact you if you're an employer of labor. It's going to impact you if you're an employee. It's going to impact you if you're unemployed. And if it doesn't impact you, it's going to impact your kids. So I think everybody needs to kind of have a strategy. It's really interesting. Over the next couple of years, next 2-3 years, two things are going to happen. One thing that's going to happen is 75 million jobs globally are going to be lost. So they're going to disappear. And we're already seeing the impacts of that locally here in Nigeria. 133 million jobs globally are going to be created. They're going to be created. So there are opportunities there. The second thing that's going to happen, which is quite pivotal, is that by 2025, for the first time in human history, computers are going to be doing more work than human beings. So the ratio is going to be something like 52% to 48%. So as you can see, there's a lot of change happening. And I'll be honest with you, my concern is I feel that Africa is slightly behind, but we'll come on to that. So the question I was asked was about talent strategy. I don't think you can actually talk about talent strategy without talking about business strategy. I think the both are intrinsically aligned. And sometimes I say to HR people when they're talking about a talent strategy or talking about job descriptions, I say, well, actually, what you're actually talking about is a business strategy. And I think you kind of need to be clear about that. And let me explain. To create a talent strategy, what an organization needs to do is it needs to think, where am I going to be in 3 to 5 years' time? And then you kind of need to work backwards from that. And in working backwards from that, you say, here's my journey. And at the particular points in time, over the next 3 to 5 years, what kind of technologies am I going to deploy? When I'm clear on the technologies that I'm going to deploy over that 3 to 5 years, I need to think about what are the skills and competencies that I need to drive those technologies. Once I figure out what the skills and competencies I need to drive those technologies are, I put that into a job description, I publish it, and I go into the market, and that's how you hire people. Now, it's quite interesting. Well, two things need to happen. One is you hire people, but also it gives you the opportunity to look within the organization and start retraining. In earnest, that way you give people within the organization opportunities as well, and that's absolutely critical. I sometimes tell people who are looking for jobs, I say to them, when you read a job description, you're not just reading a job description. You'll be shocked at how many people apply to jobs, and they don't even read the job description. So the CV isn't aligned to the job description. But actually, you've got to say to yourself that a job description is a strategic document. So if you're looking for a job, especially in the digital space, my big ask to you is read the job description. The interesting thing, though, is the technical part that I've just described, that's quite easy because it's process-driven. Where I think the real challenge is when it comes to talent strategy is in two components. One component is in attracting staff. The second component, and we've talked about it extensively, is retaining staff. So let's talk about attracting staff. So I have a question. Can everybody with a full-time job please raise your hand? Everybody with a full-time job, can you please raise your hand? Okay, full-time job, please raise your hand. Okay, interesting. So we recently conducted an analysis, and what it suggests is that 50% of the people who raise their hands, if the opportunity presents itself, you're going to leave the country in the next 12 months. And Kelvin, I noticed you there. That I was watching you. One of my staff is there. I was watching you. You're planning to leave the country in the next 12 months. Fact. We've done the research. The other thing that we found that was really interesting was 88% of the people who are leaving are young people, millennials and Gen Zs. Why are they leaving? 4 reasons. The first reason they're leaving is because of security. And the second reason they're leaving is because of the economy. So that tells you there's work to do. So that means that it doesn't matter how great your organization is. These are external factors, sometimes which are beyond our control as employers. So if we don't fix security, if we don't fix the economy, what we're seeing from the data is that people will leave. Other couple of reasons why they're leaving. One is salary, and that's understandable, and this is a global issue. Leaving because of salary because the cost of living has gone up. So we think about inflation at 23%, think about the price of food, what it was, a few years ago, what it is now. We're at that point where it's starting to impact employees. That's just the truth. The other reason why they're leaving is culture. They're leaving because of the culture sometimes that exists within organizations. The term that was coined from our survey is toxic culture within some Nigerian organizations. And what does that mean? Ultimately, there's 4 types of cultures. There's a hierarchical culture, and as you can imagine, that's top-down control, oga at the top. We know that, in this environment, you're talking, I'm talking. That kind of environment, that's hierarchical. The second kind of culture that we sometimes see is quite prevalent in this economy is the family culture. And you can imagine that's kind of natural because there's a lot of family businesses. The interesting thing about the family culture is, they're great places to work, but sometimes there's challenges because, yes, everybody's friends, but we don't really, in those cultures, we don't really challenge each other. So what you find sometimes is those kind of cultures, strategically, they don't keep up. Everybody's friends, but we don't really meet our objectives and we don't make much money, sometimes. The third kind of culture is market-orientated culture. A market-orientated culture is interesting because in a market-orientated culture, what you're doing is everything is built around the products and services and the needs of the customer. But the interesting thing with that is sometimes if you base your culture around the needs of the customer, you might get it wrong. What you should be thinking about is what will the customer want in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time. That's the challenge with a market-oriented culture. The culture that we're seeing that digital talent loves and they gravitate towards is called an adhocracy. And an adhocracy is where it's an open, innovative culture. It's a safe place for talent to work. Ideas can come from anywhere. People can speak freely to their bosses. Ideas flow by, multi-directionally from the top down, bottom up. And it's a safe space for people to work and share ideas. Those are adhocratic cultures, and that's where individuals, in the digital space prefer to work. So what am I saying? I'm saying on the first question, when it comes to talent strategy, it's not as simple as just process. That's one part. You also need to consider culture. It's a big deal. And the second thing that we really need to consider is, the whole point about it's not just about getting staff in, but you also have to have mechanisms in place where you can retain that staff as well.
Thank you so much.
And to the second question, and I think the second question I'll be a lot shorter. So the second question was about optimizing talent in Africa. I think that's an interesting one. For me, I'm not worried about talent. I've heard a lot of debate about talent and the challenges around training, et cetera, et cetera. I feel that if we get the vision right, talent will emerge organically or deliberately. But I don't think we have a cohesive story in Africa just yet. What do we want to be famous for in Africa when it comes to technology space? What do we want to be famous for at our country level in Nigeria? What do we want to be famous for at a state level? And I think it's very important, because I think once you can come out with a compelling vision and a compelling strategy, people will buy into it. Ecosystems will buy into it. Investors will buy into it. And talent will emerge like a phoenix. So I feel that that's one thing we're missing. I feel that the question of digital, what we should be asking ourselves, is how can we use digital to alleviate poverty? And how can, we've talked recently and we said there's 133 million people in poverty in Nigeria. The question we should be asking ourselves is how can we use digital as a mechanism so it can alleviate people out of poverty? Now, what's really interesting, 22 years ago, this was the strategy of the British government. And I was fortunate at the time I was part of that conversation. What do I mean? So the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, what he said was, he foresaw into the future and he gave a speech saying the E-generation is with us. This was 22 years ago. And what he talked about was, he didn't want digital to create a divide between the rich and the poor. He knew there was coming a time that if the people en masse didn't have digital and technology skills, some people would be left behind. And he knew that would create a problem. So what did he do? He set about reducing the cost of broadband at the time. He pushed broadband into rural areas. He created courses, and they pushed those courses free into the economy for the people who were underprivileged. He made sure that over 100,000 schools and learning centers had access to free technology and free learning. And over time, he digitized government. And what he did, which was really interesting, he shifted all of the services that government provides to the citizens, he shifted them online. And at the time, he was heavily criticized because people were saying, well, how can people connect with these services? How can I apply for a driver's license? How can I apply for a passport? But what he was doing inadvertently, he was challenging people to train and challenging people to engage with technology. And what that has meant, that if you look at the rankings, the e-government rankings, the UK is higher. If you look at the e-government rankings in Africa, Nigeria currently is at 140. Ghana is at 106. There are only 4 countries that are beating the global average. So what does that mean? It means in the e-government space as well, there's a lot of work to do. So just in conclusion, big vision and talent takes care of itself. Thank you very much.
What do we want to be famous for in Africa? Tell the story, investors will buy in. Great word. My next question is to Mr. Idris Bugaje. And it's straight. How is the MBT ensuring that young people are digitally prepared for the future of work in public sectors?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Dr. Koko. I represent the Executive Secretary of the National Board for Technical Education, Kaduna, Professor Idris Mohamed Bugaje. Distinguished discussants, participants, good afternoon, please. Yes, as you may be aware, the National Board for Technical Education is a sole regulatory and supervisory body for technical and vocational education falling outside the university. So it means it is a regulatory body for polytechnics, monotechnics, and specialized institutions, as well as technical colleges. The first panel that precedes ours and what we are discussing currently make 2 important positions. Covenant, CWG, Philip Consulting, and as Madam Honorable Commissioner put it earlier with her first panel which she participated, they agreed on 1 or 2 things rather. First, yes, we have to establish that there is a skill gap. For us to agree that there is a skill gap, let me speak in the angle of the regulatory agency which I represent. 2 important issues are peculiar to Lagos and Kano. Now that we are talking about Lagos, so let's talk about Lagos. The population of Lagos is 10% of national standing. So whichever figure you see, whether they say Lagos is 15 million or Lagos is 25 million, let's take Lagos to be a total 10% population of Nigeria. And in recent assessment, Nigerian population is put as over 200 million. So if we take 210, 225, then Lagos is what? When we take 10%. So it means there is market as far as industrial and technological activities are concerned. Now, if the 10% of population represent that larger market of nearly 25 million people, so it means industrial activities are what? Are high. Now, if industrial, commercial, and technological activities are high, then check also what is the GDP of Lagos. Also, if you are charging the GDP of Lagos representing 10% of national population, you should also take 30% of the total national GDP and put it and give it to Lagos. Then if we have $445 billion GDP standing as a national economy, then that of Lagos will be what? Around $133 billion. Although Lagos state government is projecting $100 billion. But by current standing, we have $133 billion Lagos state economy. That also confirms that is what? That is industry and technological activities which require jobs. Job and money, you know. Yes, so the other component which we need to understand, which will also confirm there is a skill gap, is to now see what is the standing of Lagos State in providing the skill requirement for the market, for the industries, for the technology that is required to power the Lagos economy. This means Lagos State has last for tech, but they have taken it away from us. I hope you know. Madam Commissioners are here, Madam Commissioner and the Honorable Commissioner for Science and Technology know. We lost last for tech due to the conversion made by the Lagos State government. We respect that decision. It is a decision of Lagos State government. Fine. So it means, do we have a polytechnic in Lagos? We don't have. Also, Lagos State government owns 6 technical colleges. 6. The technical colleges, as they are, they produces the kind and type of manpower we call artisan and craftsman. The polytechnic, the monotechnic, such as the College of Health Technology, the College of Nursing, and it is also important to inform this gathering that the nursing certificate in Nigeria is no longer rated certificate of nursing. Why? Because it neither falls equivalent of a national diploma, nor equivalent of national certificate. That is why the Nursing Council, Nursing and Midwifery Council, has gone back to a drawing board and agreed to award national diploma and higher national diploma in nursing. And I also hope this gathering is aware that nursing graduates from Nigerian schools of nursing, now we converted them to colleges of nursing, are also a sought-after skill commodity in the world. That you should know. So now they are going also to be awarded national diploma and higher national diploma upon graduation. So here, what are we saying? It means still, we need to understand the manpower gap in the context of what I presented as Lagos State. So generally, a graduate of university is regarded as a professional manpower. That's what it is. So it means we have craftsmen, artisan, technician, and technologies coming from MBTE certification. Either a polytechnic, a monotechnic, a technical college, or a specialized institution. Still here, let's take an engineer now for the purposes of analysis. If a university produces one engineer, that engineer is expected to work with 4 technologies who are HND holders. In turn, with 8 technicians who are ND holders. In turn, with 16 artisan or craftsmen. So we have LASU. Then now, of recent, we have LASU Tech. I think that's what they call the LASU Tech. It's a Lagos State University of Science and Technology. So now check the quantum of graduation as of before the conversion of LASU Tech, what LASU gives to Lagos. Take away UNILAG, please. It's not owned by Lagos State. So let's do our calculation with what Lagos State government owns and what is as a proprietor and the promoter of education that is turning out manpower which we are assessing now. So it means 1 engineer to 4 technologists to 8 technicians to 16 craftsmen and artisans. Where do you place the quantum of the gap we are discussing? It means, yes, the gap exists. That is a confirmation of the position of the 2 panelists now. The second position also means we agree we need to do something about the curriculum. Yes, we need to do. It means also the curriculum currently being operated is not matching the needs of the job market. There is a reason always for that. Philip Consulting, Joberman, you will know that certain situation when you are assigned a recruitment exercise, the job applicants that come are always all the time not matching the job itself. That's why you talk about the job description. Here, the curriculum are what? Are largely at variance with what the jobs require. The reason is this. I'm happy my very senior colleague, Professor Ogundufe, knows until when Professor Peter Okebukola became NUC Executive Secretary, Nigerian university system has never been subjected to quality assurance. Let's talk. We are Nigerians. It was during the time of Peter Okebukola accreditation started in Nigerian universities. And it was at that time they established what we call BMAS, that is Basic Minimum Academic Standards. This week now, 2022, the same NUC roll out what they call Core Curriculum and Minimum Academic Standards. So it moved from BMAS to CCMAS now. So here, you cannot give a curriculum and sit down. I was in Lagos sometimes here. I met a professor, very funny, when we are talking about curriculum and the stakeholders in developing a curriculum. The guy was telling me he single-handedly rolled out the curriculum offered in his department. What did he know Philip Consultant needs if they want to employ an accountant, if they want to employ a management scientist, you know? What did he know? Now, the Ministry of Education or Science and Technology require of a research officer. He didn't know. He only feel what he want to give that class. And he told them that at the end of the day, what happened? They come out and they don't match the job. So in a curriculum situation, Madam Commissioner, I'm happy you are seated here, and also your counterpart in the science and technology. In developing a curriculum, you must take account of the stakeholders. This the MBT has done at all the time. First, who are the employers of labor? You need them. They are the one to tell you what we want from your schools. And then you produce the graduate to match their requirements. Then the practitioners who are professional bodies. You need them in the development of the curricula. Why? Because they are the one to accept or accommodate these students after graduation. So the professional practice or licensing, which may be required, that's what now the professional bodies will tell. Three, now you require the university, in the case of polytechnics, why these children will now progress in their career. Either they want to go to university or they remain as technicians or technologists on the job. Now, the other component we need to understand is that the board is doing a lot in reviewing and developing curricula. Here, what we need to do as Lagos State government is to look at the emerging areas of your needs as an economy. What are these emerging areas? Is it in the ICT, mechatronics, autotronics? Because largely now, if you take LASPOTECH and converted it to a university, you need to understand that it has to be called a specialized university. What made it specialized? That means students going to LASPOTECH do have to have a special skill. Maybe they should be only ND holders. And then when you graduate as a degree holder from LASPOTECH rather, he will not be the same like the conventional LASU. Because, so please try to understand this. I think there will be another opportunity to say something more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're out of time, but I we can't end this session without giving Honorable Commissioner. Yes, we can. So I realized that you wanted to respond, or should I go straight to the question? All right, ma'am. Okay, so I'll go straight to your question, ma'am, and that is, how can education and training providers place a stronger focus on providing skills and development opportunities that are relevant to the needs of learners, society, and the economy? Very quickly. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much. In answering, I'll also address some of the issues raised by
thank you.
The gentleman from NAPTEP. Yes, you know, I said it in the earlier session that unfortunately our curriculum has maintained a rigid position somewhere with a lot of focus on content, on knowledge, and so on, but very little focus on skills. And so, as a state, and since we're talking about Lagos State now, I would like to just give an idea about what we've tried to do with the curriculum. We do have to present our students to the Nigerian curriculum. The rigidity of the curriculum comes out when they have to do the WAEC exam, where the methodology of assessment is such that it drives them to what we call the lower order skills and not the higher order skills. It's getting better, but there's a tendency to drive them to the lower order skills, and therefore that is why that curriculum is so knowledge intensive. For instance, if I can just give an example, the Nigerian curriculum, the WAEC will say, this is the eye, draw the eye, label the eye. If you go to some other more engaging systems, they will say, these are 4 eyes. What's wrong with them? There's no way you cannot answer that question unless you know the parts of the eye. So you don't need to draw and be labeling one by one, because what that does, it encourages rote learning, cramming, and pouring. And so we always have to remember that we have that assessment exam. And that is why we opted to go in Lagos State and say, look, here we are going to have various levels. In our secondary schools, there's an extremely high attrition rate because WAEC, NECO, and CO assume people are going to go to university. They are not. If you look at JAM, maybe 2 million people are sitting for JAM. The universities have a total carrying capacity of under 1 million, maybe 700,000. So you are going to break the hearts of 1.3 million people. And next year, the number is going to rise because the 1.3 will sit again together with those just coming out of school. So the number continues to rise. So let's be realistic and just accept that many of our students are really not going to go to university. And that's why I was very excited when I learned about the workplace and how someone who didn't go to university actually was found to be the most desirable employee. So that's why we decided, look, let's go for a qualification that students can have where they will work, they'll get work. Let's stop doing, and when they graduate, let's stop graduating people, hundreds of people who did BA philosophy. I have many with many CVs, can't get jobs for them, you know. But let's look at what the environment wants. And that's why in developing our comprehensive school curriculum, we actually worked with the private sector. The chairman of the committee is from the private sector. More than 3/4 of the members are from the private sector. So they drew up as, what does the private sector need? We had to do our research. NESG has done some research, other organizations have done some research, and so on, about the jobs that are most essential in the workplace of today and in the workplace of tomorrow. And that's when we drew up the various disciplines. We are doing agric, yes, because this is Lagos, we don't have land, but we can do urban farming. We are doing fashion. This is Lagos. Look at the ladies here. Very fashionable. We are doing photography. Look around. Young people are always, snapping themselves. We are doing ICT. And that, for us, is so critical that every school must do ICT. And it's not ICT as in go and learn Word, PowerPoint, and so on. It's ICT as in artificial intelligence, as in robotics, as in coding. I've gone around. I've gone to visit a STEM school somewhere outside Nigeria to say, how do you teach coding to 3-year-olds? because I actually went through the school and every level, a STEM school, 3 Ls, 4 Ls, 5 Ls, and they've told us what to do. So we've done a lot of work with the private sector. They've given us their curriculum, they've trained our teachers, some have even built labs and so on for us. In fact, I forgot construction. Lagos is a huge construction zone. So we are going to have to train people who are going to work in that sector. So I think we all have to, the main thing is, like he said, like the gentleman from NAPTEP said, work with the community. What do you want? Do you want BA philosophy, or you want somebody who is going to be able to develop codes for the workplace? Which one do you want? It's good if a person knows about philosophy to some extent, but that is not going to put food on the table. Yeah. And it's one of the major reasons why our students are japping, because there is no hope here, because all we are churning out are people who just cannot work effectively in the workplace. And we have 5 colleges of technical training. We cannot wait. We don't have the luxury of time to wait for these schools, which are very big, expensive schools, requiring expensive methods of, they are very expensive to maintain. Total capacity in those schools is 10,000. We have 100,000 children in GS3. So only 1% of them, because they take 2,000 per year, can go to those schools. We have to make sure that we have outlets where they can go to. Not everybody is going to go to university. Don't deceive yourself. Even those who pass and have 8 A1s, they can't afford it anyway. They don't go to university either. So why don't you give them skills you know they can work? They can still go to university if they want. But by then they'll be earning their own income, be self-employed, and be able to cope in the workplace. No, I know time has passed, but I think it's only fair to allow me to have my say. Thank you. So I think... Thank you very much. So I think we all have to be realistic about our environment. Our environment in Lagos is such that we have we have 1 million children in our public schools. With 1 million children, we have to really be strategic about what they are going to be able to do when they leave our schools. And so that's why we've had to rethink, reimagine, and actually reconstruct part of the educational system that we are offering in the States. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, a warm appreciation for every member of the panel today. Thank you so much for contributing, and we really had a good time. Did we? We had a good time, right? Thank you. Please appreciate my panel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Please do stand for a quick photo op. And thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner, for the last comments. The reference to the moderator was not for you to round up, man. It was for him to moderate. Please, once again, a round of applause to them. Media, press.
Call the commissioner, the SA, the PS to join on the group photo.
Okay, please, can we have the commissioner, the SA, and the PS, yes, to please join this photo up. Thank you very much. So I'm sure the news you've all been waiting for is that of lunch. Lunch will be served during the breakout sessions. 2 will hold here and 2 will hold in the other room. Please do ensure that you
some of the interventions that Lagos State government has done in that regard. But you know what they always say? They say that charity begins at home. While Lagos State government is busy connecting with the ecosystem out there, we're also trying as much as possible to develop, transformational skills within the Lagos State Public Service. So part of that process, OTCI developed a program where we created creativity and innovation ambassadors across the Lagos State Public Service, and civil servants were given the opportunity to come up with brilliant ideas that could actually help shape the narrative as far as public service delivery is concerned. Through that process, we were able to actually generate about 278 ideas across the Lagos State Public Service. I think we deserve a round of applause for that. So, as part of that process, we had a grand finale competition, which is first of its kind in Nigeria, I must say. We had a public service ideas day competition, where public servants were given the opportunity to actually compete and come up with a lot of innovative ideas. Through that process, we came up with 6 finalists, and those 6 finalists are being recognized here today. And I think I'm going to pass the mic to the MC to say a little bit about those individuals as we call them out for recognition. Thank you.
All right, the awardees are Ani Baba Nuruddin Kehinde. Can he please come forward? Ani Baba Nuruddin Kehinde is a grade level 14 chief accountant. Was seconded from local government to Minister of Finance based on his vast knowledge of improving revenue. He was the overall winner at the Dr. Miriam Koinsola Jaramola, a senior medical officer at the Ministry of Health. She resolved long processing and delays in approval of medical financial assistance requests, especially emergency cases worth over 500,000 naira and below, leading to detrimental situations such as worsening health conditions or death. She was a second-place winner with the solution on reducing the processing time for medical financial assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Miriam Koinsola. Mr. Adeyemi Ahmed, I don't think he's here. Alugba Olariwaju Olalekan is a principal, he's here. A principal agricultural officer, and he is the 4th place winner. His idea focused on digitization of the Lagos State Input Supply Agency with the objective to develop a sustainable digital strategy for improving the sourcing, managing, and selling of subsidized farm inputs in order to improve the state IGR and enhance food security. Bamidele Oyediji is the next. If she's here, Bamidele, please come forward. Afolorunso Bamidele Oyediji. Is she here? And the last person is Ojo Imolemiton Olusegun. You're Bamidele, right? Please come forward. Bamitale. I'm sorry for that mix-up. So these are the winners. There are 6 of them, but we have 4 of them present at this venue today.
Please, can we have gentlemen of the press, the pictures? Okay, and the 2 commissioners, please, on stage as well.
We'd like the Commissioner, Estab, to please join them. Commissioner Education, to please also join them for these photograph. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Science and Tech, would like you to also join them.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience, your attention. Those of you online as well, we appreciate the time that you have taken to be here.
Is it okay? It was breaking.
Oscar, I think we're moving to the breakout session. It's time for
Respective breakout session that concerns you. We'll give more information on this as well. Thank you.
Where's my session? Which session are you accelerating or
no, the
retaining or